Now ready to go on to the next stage of the assembly, which is putting together the motor housings and attaching those to the motherboard. So to do this, I need this motor housing here, a wheel, an axle, the rubber tyre, a worm gear for the motor, and the electric motor itself. I also need, of course, the motherboard, which I'm going to attach them to. So how do I start? I start by putting the axle into the motor housing, okay? And to do that, I start with see that it's got a short side and a long side, and the short side, I insert that first into the motor housing, in those slots up there, and then I twist it down, push it down until it makes a clicking noise. Okay, very nice, very easy. Okay, then I take my wheel, and I can push that onto the long side of the axle. Okay, and doesn't go on very far, but that's plenty. Then I've got to put the rubber housing around the outside of the motor, outside of the wheel, and that's rather complicated and it takes a little while, but I'm sure you can get it right. I just don't want to have to do it right now. And then I put the worm gear onto the end of the motor spindle. Okay, that motor spindle there, worm gear, this little spiral fella, and I slot that on there. I can get it started, and it might be a bit hard to push on, so if you push the motor down onto a hard surface, not your hand, the table, it should slide on all the way. Okay, so the worm gear goes all the way onto the spindle. Then I have to look at the contacts here, okay, which I mentioned earlier. The contacts are the metal bits at the top of the motor. Make sure that they're bent out, okay, so that they're standing proud like that. And with the contacts facing away from the wheel, okay, the contacts there facing away from the wheel there, I slot my motor down into the housing until it makes a click. Okay, so now I've got the motor, and I should have a rubber tyre around the outside of that there. I've got the motor in the housing, I've got the worm gear, I've got the axle, and I've got the wheel. Now all that remains for this side, okay, is for me to insert this into the onto the motherboard. Now this is going to require a little bit of force, so you want to make sure that you get it right, because it'll be hard to take it off again. The wheel has to be pointing out, obviously. The contacts have to be pointing in, and there are two slots on the housing, front and back, that slot across the board. Notice that on the board here, on the motherboard, you can see those two gold bits there. Those are going to make contact with the contacts on the motor. So lining it all up and making sure that the slot on the housing matches up with the board. I can slide that in. Oh, until it makes a click. My wheel came off, but that's fine. I can just push that back on again. Okay, and now you just need to go ahead and do exactly the same for the wheel on the other side. The only thing will be that this time you have to make sure that the axle is pointing out the other side of the housing, so you can have your two wheels pointing out. So it's the same, only opposite. I'll do that now for you in fast motion.